Hello, everyone. I'm Kelly EVERSOLE, the president of EVERSOLE Associates and also the leader of the Women in Genomics Network. And I'm really honored to have a great lineup of participants today and a great panel. LaKisha Odom from the Foundation for Food and Agricultural Research is with us, as well as two other individuals from the Produce Marketing Association who LaKisha will introduce. LaKisha has an impressive track degree, both in terms of science and in terms of policy, and at that interface between science and policy. And she's a scientific program director in innovative science and interdisciplinary thinking, focused on tackling today's complex challenges in food and agriculture. She's developed her passion for the intersectional space of research and policy while working at US EPA in the Office of Research and Development. And she's also been an American Association for the Advancement of Science Fellow and done a number of other things in both in government and in research. So I'd like to really welcome LaKisha and turn this over to you for our first ever discussion on career opportunities in agriculture. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to pop off and hand it over to LaKisha.
Thank you so much for that welcome, Kelly. I'm very excited to be here. I'll share just a little bit about myself and then turn it over to the people of the hour to really talk about this amazing opportunity. As Kelly mentioned, I definitely am currently employed at the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research, which is a nonprofit 501c3, and we are focused on increasing investment in research in food and agriculture through public-private partnerships. One of the major mandates of our organization is training and the future for workforce in agriculture and research. So being able to introduce an exciting internship opportunity like this is very much in line with our mission. And another thing I would love to say or share is one of the ways in which Kelly didn't talk about this, but how we met is that I was an early career intern for the American Phytopathological Society, where I had the opportunity to learn from Kelly and other researchers in the space how you really can move your research into policy and how you can affect change. And it was one of the best learning opportunities of my life. And it also was an unpaid internship. So hopefully we'll have the chance to share a little bit how opportunities like this, where they may not have financial opportunities, they are huge opportunities to network. I won't tell y'all how old I am, but you can see my hair. But being in the fellowship or the internship opportunity with Kelly, and now years later, we're working together. But those relationships, those networking opportunities, and the things that I learned from that opportunity with Kelly were huge as they influenced my future trajectory. So I'd be happy to share a little bit more of my experience in being a part of some of these opportunities. So now it is my pleasure to introduce two speakers today. We have Max Teplitski, and he is a chief science officer at PMA, which is the Produce Marketing Association, where he's responsible for produce safety, ag technology, supply chain, and sustainability programs, as well as government relations. I'll let him talk a little bit more in detail about the exact specificities of his career path, but I really want to get into the discussion. And the other speaker that we'll have today is Douglas Bohr, who's an executive director for the Center for Growing Talent and also serves as Senior Vice President for PMA. And in his role, Doug leads the Center for Growing Talent's mission to raise awareness, attract and develop talent on behalf of fresh produce and floral industry supply chain from farm to retail. So I think we have two really exciting speakers that will share not only their experience, but why they think that this opportunity is so pivotal as we think about how students can gain opportunities to learn, to connect, to network, and all these other amazing things that they'll share in greater detail. So I'll turn it over to Max and Doug to lead the conversation, and then I'll be back in a little bit to go through questions. Oh, one last housekeeping issue. You will be able to share questions in the Q&A section, and we will open the discussion for questions at the end of the session. So please feel free to send your questions. I'm monitoring that chat box, and so I'll be able to introduce the questions to our speakers in a few minutes. So Max, Doug, you ready to take it away?
All right, well, LaKisha, thank you for the introduction. This was a great opportunity, and we certainly look forward to the conversation today and to hosting at least some of you on the webinar today as our interns. So first of all, let me describe a little bit what PMA is, because certainly when I came to PMA, I didn't know what trade associations were and what they did. So PMA, Produce Marketing Association, is a nonprofit. And as a nonprofit, we represent the interests of the entire fresh fruit and floral industry. So our members include everybody from fertilizer and seed companies and all the way to the retailers and restaurants. But the majority of our members are growers and shippers of fresh fruits and vegetables. And when we say that we represent their interests, that means that we provide both the education for our members on the issues that impact the industry the most, like what are the newest regulatory developments in food safety? What is the hottest agricultural technology that's being developed in another country around the world, and how can we take advantage of it in the US or in a different country? And also engaging with the government, because we want to make sure that fresh fruits and vegetables are on everybody's table and on everybody's plate. And it is the safest and the best food for all of us. And we want to make sure that everybody has a chance to eat fresh fruits and vegetables and enjoy floral as well. So that's basically the goal of PMA.
So that seems to be my cue then to share a little bit about the Center for Growing Talent. First, LaKisha, I want to say thanks for having us and for moderating the conversation. Happy to be joining all of you and supporting this specific effort, but also raising a little bit of awareness about what we do, and particularly how we connect young people to the fresh produce and floral industry. So in simplest terms, Center for Growing Talent is the education foundation of PMA. We were actually founded, and we work to create excitement and to educate young people about the enriching career opportunities that exist across the produce and floral industry. And again, to Max's point, across the full supply chain of that industry. PMA is one of the few trade associations that actually supports companies from farm to retail. And in doing so, that creates a very unique opportunity to have demonstrable and I think significant impact for both our members, but also for creating a gateway for young talent to come into this industry. In addition to what we do to connect and excite young people about opportunities in the fresh produce and floral industry, we also meet that talent on the other side. If you choose to come into the industry, Center for Growing Talent also provides personal and professional development resources in the form of online training, programs, conferences, mentoring for industry professionals at all stages of their careers. So for the purpose of our conversation today, we're focusing on that very first part of what the center does, exciting and educating young people about career opportunities in our industry and connecting them to companies specifically across that full supply chain. We believe that with the increasing visibility and the growing positive perception of plant-based food, the fresh produce industry is certainly at an inflection point. And we have a unique opportunity to leverage positive attitudes or increasingly positive attitudes to not only increase consumption, as Max was saying, but also to position the industry as a desirable and meaningful career path. So each year, our Career Pathways program, which is the Center for Growing Talent's flagship program, founded in 2004, partners with as many as 45 universities and colleges, some of which, or many of which I believe are represented here on today's webinar, to work and partner directly with faculty at those 45 universities and colleges to help students understand and get to know the produce and floral industry up close and personal, if you will. We do that through a number of ways. We do that through educational workshops, but I think what really differentiates us from a more sort of traditional or academic approach is that we bring the industry into the classroom. We have industry leaders come to present directly to students. We provide behind the scenes tours of the industry to give students that firsthand, up close and personal view of the industry, to get to know what it looks and feels like. So we're not just telling you, we're showing you what the industry looks like, and we're connecting you directly to these industry leaders, some of who also serve as career ambassadors for our program and help to mentor young students and give them some inside information about their company, about the industry, and just sort of allows you to get to know the industry a little bit better and in a way you might not otherwise do through your academic coursework. So with that, I'll stop there and happy to answer any more questions about what the center does as we move forward with the conversation.
And I think, Max, now would be a great time to maybe talk a little bit about the specifics of the program itself, some of the eligibility, and just some of the details about what's the optimal or ideal student for this opportunity. Is it focused on undergrads or grads? What are you looking for?
So let's start from the middle. Let's talk about the projects that could be available to the interns that will get selected, and then we'll talk about eligibility and everything else. So I drafted 6 potential bullet points for potential projects, but these are just suggestions to give you a feel for what questions we're asking, what is impacting the industry, and what can you tackle. And again, this list is not exhaustive. If you hear something and it sparks some other question that you would like to tackle, we're certainly all ears. All right, so and these are, by the way, in the handout that you should access to. So the question number 1, the project number 1 is carbon sequestration by fruit trees and berries. How does it compare to carbon sequestration of forests? And the reason behind this question is we're hearing a lot about the new initiatives of the Biden-Harris administration as they look into well, number 1, United States rejoined the Paris Accord, and with this new administration, we're focusing on alleviating some of the consequences of climate change. And carbon sequestration is one of these opportunities. And agriculture is the original carbon sequestration department, right? So can we think about ways to do it most efficiently? And that's why we're looking at carbon sequestration by fruit trees and berries, and how does it compare with carbon sequestration in forests as the potential first project. And then sort of the flip side of that question is, what are the consumer preferences for sustainably produced, let's call it carbon plus fresh produce? Because we know that consumer behavior is one of the major drivers that impact the industry and government policies. We would like an intern to research whether consumers are truly selecting for sustainably produced product when they go to the supermarket and make decisions to purchase or not purchase something. Another potential project is conducting case studies. For example, we can connect interns with 1 or 2 or 3 or even 5 of our member companies, and we have over 2,600 member companies in 54 countries. And in these case studies, we're asking, what is the business case for sustainability? Recapture of CO2, other sustainability practices. So it's pretty straightforward business case study. And the advantage of doing that is we will connect you directly with companies and with decision makers in these companies, and you will have a chance to establish your own relationships as you're working on the project. You're building this portfolio of both your sort of business studies, but you're also building your Rolodex of connections in the industry. There are also close to 100 of different sustainability audit schemes from different organizations. And as a fourth project, we're asking somebody to sit down and compare these audit schemes. How do they compare? What do they require? How are they different? And that's going to be a great guide for our member companies and others in the industry to determine which of the sustainability audit schemes make sense. A fifth project is on green financing. And green financing is the brand new area of financing. It is nascent in the United States, but in Europe and in Asia, there are already sort of green instruments like green bonds or sustainability-backed financing. So what can we learn from these, and what can we, which instruments, green instruments, can we use to support our industry as we're thinking about retooling, developing new practices for sustainable production of fresh fruits and vegetables. So the first 5 projects, they focus pretty closely on sustainability and carbon sequestration and issues that are related to the intersection of produce industry and climate change. And the 6th project is a little bit different. It deals with a nutrition policy template. So how do we get fresh fruits and vegetables accessible to all? And this is a pretty straightforward policy work. So if you were a decision maker, if you were a president of the United States, and you know, once you turn 31, you could be, right? What will be your policy on getting the most nutritious foods on the planet to every table? And we understand there are a lot of barriers, and that's the responsibility of the government to break down these barriers. So how would you approach a nutritional policy? So 6 potential projects, but again, these are just suggestions. We're open to other thoughts and ideas. And in terms of resources that will be available to the interns, again, within PMA, we have a research department, and these folks, they conduct some of the in-house research, connect with consumers. We collect a lot of data, and these data will be available to you to pick through, analyze, and you know, develop it into a story. We will also connect you with our members, our members, again, everybody from very well-known seed companies to pretty much every retailer and every quick serve restaurant. I can't start rattling off names, but it'll take me a while, and you will recognize 3/4 of them pretty easily. So you will have a chance to interview decision makers in these organizations. You can ask them questions, and again, the advantage here is that you will start building both the portfolio and the Rolodex of people that you can lean on in your future careers. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say, LaKisha, that this is something you can probably speak to, but this opportunity where you begin to make those contacts, you step into the industry through a very specific role, you're in that role, but you make so many different connections, and it opens up the door to many different possibilities.
This is absolutely accurate. I was taking so many notes about things that you both are describing that are so innovative and unique. The opportunity to truly see behind the curtain of what industry looks like, that's such a rare occurrence, or at least in a lot of the internships that I've engaged with, being able to really understand. And I think one of the things you said is showing students what industry really, like how the work actually happens and what the considerations are, and such a flexible program as well, because though you outlined several potential projects, there's a lot of opportunity to work with that individual student and design something that they can learn as well. And I think that's also a really unique aspect of an internship, and really just exciting to see that there's so much flexibility and opportunity for networking, for really digging into some cutting edge questions in the field, right? Thinking about what the impacts on carbon sequestration and climate change are. Those are some really exciting topic areas that you're describing to cover. So I don't know if you have more presentation, but I have a question if I could ask it. It sounds as though PMA has really prioritized growing talent. So one of the questions was like, what brought you all to this leadership space, right? Where you're really realizing how important it is to bring in students and give them so much access, because this is very rare that so much behind the scenes information is even shared. So how did leadership at PMA really understand how key this is?
Well, I can start. So, for me, this is a third career, right? I was a professor at a university. I worked for the federal government, and now I'm in this nonprofit space. And truly, it was a journey of discovery for me, and I want to offer this opportunity to the students who are in earliest stages of their careers and truly seeing behind the curtain, especially for many of us who are first generation students, right? Those of us who haven't been exposed to, a lot of this stuff growing up. This is a chance to see what is happening. For example, those who will be involved in some of the policy making internships, they will get a chance to sit on our conversations with the lobbyists. They will be in the rooms where we discuss policy with, congressmen and congresswomen. And this is a chance to demystify this entire process, right? Once you see behind the curtain, it's not, I don't know how to describe it, but it's a very empowering feeling to understand that I can see myself being in that room. And we want to make sure that the students who come into our pipeline, they can see themselves in these boardrooms. They can see themselves at the big tables, so that when your next employer asks you where you see yourself 5 years from now, you can not only say, I see myself in a boardroom, but you can visualize what that boardroom looks like. And I think that's very powerful. And that's why we want to open this opportunity to as many people as possible. Doug, what is your thinking?
So I think there's I just add a couple more things onto what Max said, and that is, first and foremost, these programs and specifically the Center for Growing Talent was born directly out of member needs. So our industry, as they're looking down the road towards growth, but also to thinking about next generation of leadership, talent is one of the issues. I mean, it's an issue for any industry, but it is certainly an issue for the fresh produce and floral industry that I will just say, it is no longer an industry of coveralls and red barns. It is an industry that is adopting some of the most advanced technology and dealing with some of the biggest issues as Max described them: climate change, sustainability, human and environmental health. These are all issues that this industry has a direct and indirect impact on. And so there is a need among these members to think about how they are addressing some of the issues that affect their business directly, but also thinking about what is the future of this industry. The second thing I would add to that is just that I think it's very important. The one thing that is coming in through the door and having the view from the association's point of view or their perspective is that, and I think Max touched on this, you do get sort of that global view of the industry, right? So you are stepping in, you are in this boardroom, you're at this meeting table or this decision-making table. You get that global view of the industry that I would say, for me personally, that changes your perspective and also allows you to have a view of where do you want to be, what role do you want to play, and how do you begin to chart a career path going forward.
And both of those statements were so powerful. I think about the internship opportunities that I've had. For example, the one in which I met Kelly EVERSOLE. Just understanding how policy or research or how you can take your skill sets and use them in different ways is so exciting, just to think about, as Max said, what is even possible for your future. And so I definitely that resonates with something that I experienced as well. And I think the thing to just continue to reiterate is having the opportunity to engage with the industry and learn more about the perspectives and how they prioritize research areas and topic areas. What are the cutting edge issues in the space? That's such a valuable thing that I don't know that there are other ways that you can recreate that. I think the other piece that I'd love to maybe piggyback on is, in thinking about doing an opportunity like this, it's fair to understand that, you know, it's a time commitment, it's a commitment of energy and effort on both parts, but definitely for the student. So I'd love to hear maybe Max or Doug, like, how do you think that students could leverage this opportunity, for example, getting credit for courses, or because it's not a paid internship, there's still other ways that I think that they could definitely get credit for the activities that they would undertake, and also just a better sense of like how long could they participate in the internship? Like, what are some of those pieces to get a sense of what is possible for the students?
Well, excellent question. Thank you, LaKisha. Well, actually, because it is an unpaid internship, we are required to make sure that it's a part of an educational experience for a student. So a student will have to enroll into a course at their home institution, and some universities have, in fact, some universities have an internship requirement for graduation, right? So they will have a course called internship. Other universities have individual studies or individual research, but this has to be for credit, for college credit. And because it is for college credit, we will coordinate with your academic calendar. So if your summer semester starts on May 1st and ends, for example, on August 15th, and I don't know, I'm just hypothesizing, these are the dates for the internship. And I know different universities have summer A, summer B, and all of it is very complicated, but we will work with your academic calendar. And in terms of time commitment, again, we understand that for a lot of you, it's going to be something else that you're doing in addition to your full-time job and your classes. So the commitment can vary anywhere from 3 hours a week to something more significant. And the goal for us is not for somebody to have just a check mark on their resume, but to truly gain an experience that, again, when you're interviewing for your next job or for your first job or for your dream job, you can say, I had that internship and this is what I learned. And these are all the opportunities that were available to me, and this is how I used them. So that's the plan.
I think that's really helpful. And I think the other thing that you said that really resonated with me is working within the confines of the student getting some sort of credit. So it isn't necessarily, I think, an internship where you won't get multiple levels of value from participation. You also get credit, but you get this amazing opportunity for networking and engagement and learning. And those are skills that you can clearly translate as you're thinking about your career path. I think the other question that kind of popped in my head as we were talking about this is, and I'd like to maybe tap Doug for this, because you are managing a lot of the growing talent and participating in this internship. Yes, there's an opportunity to leverage for a job opportunity, but what are some other things that you could think of that you could leverage this opportunity to do?
That's actually a really good question, LaKisha. I in answering that question, I just want to go back to a word that Max used, and I think keeps coming up, but experience. I think, experience right now at this stage in the game for many of the students is key. And I think building on that, the educational aspect of that experience is important. Having a role in internship with an association, as we discussed earlier, provides a very different type of view of the industry. You're not stepping into a job as much as you are extending your educational experience and learning about this industry from that bird's eye view. I think that is extremely important. With that comes a lot of other benefits. I think there are opportunities to engage with leaders like Max, other leaders in the association, but also leaders across some of our member companies, as he described it earlier. And through that, you build relationships. You may find some early role models, and you may even be so lucky as to find a mentor that you connect to and then helps begin to guide you through your early stage career development. I think between the experiential component and the opportunity to engage with leaders in the industry, whether it's within PMA or in the industry as a whole, that is incredibly valuable. And this connects you again to all of those different opportunities in the way that I think sometimes going to work for a very specific company might be a little bit more of a narrow, role to play from that experiential and that educational perspective.
And I think that's a great thing to highlight because I just had the chance to talk to Kelly and see her short as she introduced me. I think about all the ways in which that opportunity that I had with her would still impact my career path today. I'll take the liberty of telling a quick story that when I started at FAR, I was brought on to just manage the soil health challenge area, and that was well within my area of expertise. But we also realized we wanted to move more into microbiome, phytobiome spaces. And one of the things that I had the opportunity to work on with Kelly during my internship with the American Pathophytological Society was working through a new initiative that they were starting that was focusing on phytobiome, microbiome. So fast forward years later, they're asking, do I have any experience in this space? And do I have a lot of college credits? Yes, I had college credits in pathology, plant path. But what was more powerful was the reality that I understood a lot of the policy issues. I understood the issues from the researchers because I sat in on all and listened and got to understand all of the challenges. So something that was one of many things that I did under this internship, and I didn't necessarily think it would play into my future career path, became one of the things that I could offer to my organization years later, as I actually do know the folks that are working in those spaces. I have had conversations around what those policy issues are. And that was, so I think there's a space where you never know in the future, all of your experiences, how they can come back and aid you in your next, or even, this wasn't my first job out of my graduate school, it was my second or third position. So even though it was years later, it was still really valuable to be able to call back that information that I gained. So I think sometimes as students, we don't always, I know I didn't always think about the ways in which things might directly impact me. And then maybe 4 or 5 years later, you're like, oh, I can pull that knowledge out. So that's always something I think about is you don't waste anything that you learn. So even if you think immediately there might not be clear connections, you'd be surprised how many times, and I'm sure Max and Doug, you've had this experience where something that you did years later, you're like, oh, actually, in this new position, I could use all those skills. So it just made me think about all the things that I learned that I didn't realize I was learning while I was in this internship opportunity. And I have stories like that from most of my fellowships and internships. There are all these skills you pick up that you don't even realize you're absorbing. And then they're so valuable later on in your career. I don't know, do y'all have similar experiences?
Certainly. The skills is one thing, but what about the connections? The connections that you made when you worked for Kelly and APS, American Pathological Society, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not stuck in a cube, xeroxing something for one company. you have this bird's eye view of a global organization and global connections.
Absolutely. And it was the first time I understood how scientists communicated their research on the Hill. That's not anything that when I was in graduate school, I had a reason to do. But because of the internship, I got the chance, as you all said, to see behind the curtain and see how you can communicate science in different ways to different audiences. That was huge for me. And that wasn't anything I necessarily thought I would start out knowing that's a need that I had. But now that I sit as a scientific program director, all I do all day is communicate my science to Congress folks, to industry folks, to farmers, to ranchers, and to other scientists. So it's a muscle that I got to build in that internship, and I utilize those skills every day. So much of what you're saying, I think, is why I got so excited, because there aren't if you do an internship and you're doing additional research, that's fine, but I don't know if you're building those other muscles. And as people that work in science but not necessarily on the bench, those other muscles, you use them a lot. Like, you use the communication, the networking, the connection, the policy, you use those muscles sometimes more than any others. And so there aren't a ton of opportunities sometimes if you're really enmeshed in being at the bench in gaining those opportunities. But it feels like this internship would really give students the chance to flex some of those communications, those scientific writing, all of those skill sets, right? I feel like that could be a great opportunity for students to grow in those spaces. I don't know if you all feel the same way.
Max took the words right out of my mouth. Connections, connections, connections. I would say, and I don't want to speak for Max, but I would presume that for both of us, we're still calling upon connections and relationships that we've built throughout our careers to help us and be partners and join us on webinars and town halls that we host for PMA on a weekly basis. Those connections and those relationships you carry forward, and you never know when you're going to be reaching back into the past and calling upon some of those. Sometimes those relationships actually do become partnerships. And I think it's important to think about an internship of this nature as an investment going forward, and what it could actually yield for you over the long haul. When we're thinking about bringing talent onto our own organization, we're looking for people who have experiences. We're looking for people who can step into a role in some cases and hit the ground running. And for whether it is a job that they've had or an internship, the experience is what trumps all, frankly.
I really like something really just resonated here when you said thinking about it as an investment and not just an opportunity, because in giving your time and energy to something like this could be such a huge investment in walking into it that way. We are receiving a few comments in the chat. So one of the questions is, I know, Max, you talked about eligibility, but could you just provide a little bit more clarity? For example, if you have a student graduating soon from their undergraduate, can they still apply for the internship?
So the Department of Labor regulations are pretty clear. To be eligible for the internship of this kind, a student must be currently matriculating at a degree granting institution, and the internship has to be for a college credit. So, those who graduate in spring semester obviously will not be eligible for a summer internship.
That is fair. The other question that I had, and you forgive me if you said it and I missed it when I was taking notes, is it specific? Could you have someone that's getting their master's or PhD if they were interested in participating in an internship for the summer?
Oh, absolutely. And I didn't answer your question when you first asked it, and I meant to. So we absolutely welcome undergraduate students, master's students, or PhD students. The advantage of this internship, for better or for worse, this is the year that it is, right? And a lot of us are working from home. So this internship is a remote internship, so you will not need to relocate to Delaware or to DC. So you can set aside X number of hours every week that you will contribute to this internship, but you will still be at your place where you are doing other things.
And have you all decided how large the cohort of interns would be? The reason being, one attendee has asked if you have multiple interns, could they collaborate with one another on multiple projects, or would it be one internship per project?
That's a great question. And we all have been in college and we all had experiences with group projects. And for some of us, those were the most invigorating experiences. And for others, they were less so. So it's going to be up to the individuals that end up in the program, whether they want to collaborate or whether they'll do individual projects, or they can work in parallel on the same question. Because unlike a multiple choice exam, there isn't the right and the wrong answer. The opposite of the right answer here is another right answer.
Wonderful. And then another question that we had from someone who's actually already applied to the internship is they would like to get a sense from you or Doug as to the role of stakeholders in different policies and how efforts are made across various stakeholders to ensure their voices are heard. So I think it's like they want to understand, since this internship will be remote, how will they really ensure that they get the chance to have that interaction and to have their voices be heard?
Yeah, and this is the commitment that I'm making, is that even though it's a remote internship, you're not going to be sort of free ranging on your own, unsupervised. We will meet either as a group or one-on-one at least once a week to make sure that you're on track, that you're getting the resources that you need, that you're getting connected to the people that you need to connect with. So, and probably during the first couple of weeks, these meetings will be more intense, more in depth, maybe even more often. But then we will continue throughout the summer semester to meet at least once a week to make sure that everybody's on track, that you're getting connected with the right people.
Exciting. What is for eligibility? International students, are they eligible?
They're eligible as long as they are students at an accredited institution and they can take this internship for a college credit.
Okay. Okay, so it's not so much the university, but their ability to link it to a college credit. So if you have a student from the UK, they can still apply if they can link it to a college credit. Because I believe one of the questions in the chat is that they would not require college credits for an internship in the UK. So that would make them ineligible. But if they could be eligible, correct?
All right, so if it's an international student at the United States institution, then it's very straightforward.
Okay.
If it's an international student at an international institution, email me and we'll have to follow up because it could differ from a country to country, and I don't want to make a blanket statement.
No, that's really helpful because I do think some students are interested. I know that I often will, and this is also very exciting because some internship opportunities, you have to be a U.S. citizen. So the reality that this would allow, if you are at a U.S. institution, it's not an issue, opens the door for a lot of the international students that I talk to because they're always a little frustrated because sometimes the opportunities, they're not eligible. So if they're at a U.S. institution, if they're an international student, they're still eligible, is really exciting.
Yeah, as long as they can take credit at the home.
But that's really helpful. That's really helpful. So I'm trying to see if we have any other additional questions around. Here we go. What are the start dates for the internship?
Our HR person reminded us that the minimum GPA has to be 3.0.
Oh, that's helpful. That's really helpful. And then when would you ideally start the internship?
So because it is tied to the academic calendar, it will start on the first day of the semester in which you enrolled, and it will end on the last day of regularly scheduled classes for the semester in which you're enrolled.
And is it only eligible for the summer, or could it go into the fall as well?
It depends, and I understand that Some schools are in semesters, some are in quarters. So we
Mhm.
work with the individual students and their academic calendar.
So more case by case basis, and if they want more information, they can definitely reach out. But it feels like there's a lot of excitement and interest around when and how and the specifics. But I believe there's also a handout that likely will have quite a bit of this information available. But I think the other question that I see is thinking about, like, this is just such a great opportunity. I think looking at how you could design a project, how you could have such one-on-one interaction. And I will say this as a person that's a program director for a nonprofit, getting access to expertise like Max and Doug's is not easy. We would have to really work hard to get time on their calendars. These are, I mean, the people that you're recommending, they're super high caliber in the field, and you don't get access to expertise like that. So the reality that these people are offering their time and attention is really huge. Like I know you guys know that, but it's just something that really blows me away how generous people are being with their time to work with interns, because I recognize that even as a director, you don't often get a chance to get that interaction. And so that's such a huge, amazing piece of this opportunity, this investment. I'm going to call it that from now on, Dick, this investment in their future, because I absolutely love thinking about the time that we spend doing things as investments, not just a thing that you're doing that's kind of a little bit of a, oh, I did this internship. No, you made an investment in learning and connecting and growing. But I just wanted to continue to just say how excellent that component is, that they would really get to interact and understand and network at that level. That is very unusual in an internship opportunity.
Well, and
I
like you
would
said,
say,
in,
go ahead,
in
Max.
pre-call, we were talking about the fact that Kelly was a great mentor to both you and me,
Mhm,
and it's paying it
mhm,
forward, right?
mhm,
I would just add to that and say, one of the things that struck me when I first stepped into this industry is it is very relationship based by the very nature of the product that the industry grows and sells and provides to consumers. And that is consistent across the industry. Our volunteer leaders that work with us, they get a lot back from what they give to the students that they work with through our program. It is truly, I think, one of the things that gives them a lot of joy and an added sense of um, pleasure, and I would say also an opportunity for them to give back to this industry that's been such a large part of their lives. So you're going to find a willingness on the part of a lot of these industry leaders to make time, to want to engage with these students. It is a unique industry and it is a unique opportunity.
absolutely. And I think one of the things you said that I took note of earlier is regarding the uniqueness of the opportunity is that you're moving from farm to retail. And in the ag spaces, you usually get to focus on farm, you get to focus on retail. You don't necessarily have an experience that might expose you from farm to retail. So that was something else that really jumped out at me as a unique opportunity to learn. It's quite unusual to have that opportunity. And the groups that PMA represents, it's wide ranging, right? It's not just, it's floral as well as ag. So you don't often get that mix of experience or the opportunity to work on projects that could run the gamut in those spaces. So I think that's another thing that, in thinking about how rewarding something like this could be, is that you get to see, in a way, a really unique set of circumstances that if you took another opportunity, you may not get to learn all of those components or what those components might look like.
And LaKisha, you have sort of an insight into what is the next horizon for science, for the discovery, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we always get asked, well, the science and the discovery is great, but how does it impact people?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm happy to speak to that. So, and I'm laughing a little bit because that's what I think about on a day-to-day basis. A lot of what we're thinking about now are those social science pieces. Thinking about, for example, in the spaces I work in, it's thinking about, for example, climate smart practices that impact improvement of soil health, but also reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Well, the questions that are coming to the fore now are more around the human elements, the economics, the adoption, the practical and tactical pieces. It's not necessarily what is it. It always remains what are those next compelling research questions that have been unanswered, but a lot of it is how do you put that into application? How do you work with industry? What role, and there's a huge role for industry to play in encouraging the adoption of practices, for example. What role do they play? At a foundation that supports public-private partnerships, and we exist to create public-private partnerships, this engagement with industry is so compelling through this internship, because I know that when I started this position, I had absolutely no connections to industry and didn't know how I would gain them. But thinking if I had the opportunity to participate in an internship like this, I could walk into the interview and talk about how I do have some experience with the industry. I do understand. I had to learn all of this on the job. I didn't have an opportunity prior to this to really get a sense of industry. And that's so key if you're going to stay in these ag spaces. Industry is a huge mover and a first mover in a lot of spaces for innovation in ag research. That's why our organization was created. Federal funding for ag research, as you both know, is relatively stagnant, but there's so much investment that's happening in that industry level to push the innovation, to get those answers, to improve adoption of practices, to make farmers more productive and resilient. And industry is playing such a leadership role in that space that having the opportunity to understand how those decisions are made or what those priorities are is, I don't know if you could replicate that any other way. And really starting to get a better sense of the role that industry can play as a leader in research spaces, I think is something that I don't know of another way to learn it other than to work with industry and learn it, But in thinking through those next questions, what are the next new cutting edge questions? For me, a lot of it is around how do we take the knowledge and then turn it into decision making for farmers and ranchers? How do we encourage adoption of these cutting edge technologies? Because we know that certain things work, but they're not adopted widely. Why is that? And how do we facilitate that? How do we use technology to improve? How do we address the shocks to our food system when things like a pandemic happen, because we've never had that happen before? How do you maintain integrity in feeding billions of people while dealing with the reality that we have a pandemic? Our food system was not designed to handle those shocks. We have extreme weather events. Texas has snowstorms. All these things farmers are dealing with on a day-to-day basis, and science is there to help them facilitate. But how do you manage the unexpected? And so those are a lot of the things I've been sitting and thinking through lately. And I know that industry has to think about these things more so than a bench scientist in a lot of instances, because these challenges are real world, real happening in real time, right? And so there's a space where industry has to be responsive to some of these challenges in a way that I think academia responds, but industry has to turn on a dime. It feels like, because I'm not in industry. So I don't know, Max or Doug, do you feel that same kind of need for I don't know if it's urgency or need to be really adaptive and move quickly and be engaging and always think 3 steps ahead? Are you all kind of working in those spaces too, with all of the interesting challenges that our ag and food sectors are facing?
Absolutely. And I want to play off something that Doug said and you, LaKisha, reinforced. When we talk about agriculture, we have this picture, the American Gothic, right? The husband and wife with a pitchfork. And this is not what the industry looks like anymore. When we talk to our industry leaders, to the CEOs, they say, We need folks who have experience in data management and big data mining and genomics. Some of the things that I haven't even heard of when I was at the university. So the goal for this internship is to bring, the fresh young minds into an industry which, they're not familiar with necessarily, or they haven't thought about career opportunities in our industry, and apply these skills and be creative and unleash themselves, right?
I have we have about 5 minutes left, but I got this really interesting question in the chat, and it's from a student who's not quite sure what they want to do with their career, and they want to get as much experience as they can. And they asked, did speakers have any specific moment or person that helped lead them to current position, and wants to help and help them to really enjoy their job. So one of the things they noticed is that we all seem really happy and smiley with the jobs that we have. We seem very happy with our career path. And I definitely remember being an undergrad or grad student, not quite knowing what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be. And so if there was one situation, opportunity, or person that maybe helped guide that and get to this place of excitement and knowing that things were possible. And I'm happy to share a little bit first. Some of my struggle is, as a PhD student, I didn't realize how much opportunity existed outside of the bench. So I was trying to make myself fit into a place where the things that most excite me and the gifts that I have were valuable, but I couldn't grow in the way I wanted to. So I love connecting people. I like thinking about complex problems. And I loved being on the bench, but there were some pieces that were missing around relationship building or engaging that I just didn't feel like I was doing at the bench. And so I think one of the things that really helped me, it wasn't a specific person, but it was an experience. It was a fellowship experience, a AAA Science and Technology Policy Fellowship. And that fellowship was geared for students that recently completed their PhD, or they just had a PhD. You could be much less early in your career if you would like, but they wanted to learn how science was used in federal spaces for policy. And it kind of piggybacked off of the spark that was lit when I was a intern with Kelly, in that I was like, oh, this was really interesting when I did this internship. This would be a 2-year opportunity to really work inside a federal agency and understand how my science works. And I think all that that did was allow, I can't remember if it was Max or Doug, to see what's possible. Because I think up until that point, I didn't know what else I could do with my PhD. And then this reality that I could be in so many different spaces. I could work in a company and be their sustainability officer. I could work at an NGO. I could manage a consortia. Like, I didn't even know all these opportunities existed. So for me, it wasn't a person, but it was the reality that I could take the learning that I had from from a doctorate and go all of these different places. That was really exciting to me. And then I was terrified of being at an NGO. I didn't know what that meant. I was scared of industry and I was scared of nonprofits. I just was like, I need to go and work on the bench. Maybe I can go work for USDA. I can't do anything else. And then in engaging with people and meeting them and seeing the work that they did and the influence and impact that they had, I recognized I could do impactful work that helped farmers and ranchers, that helped researchers, but it wasn't quite in the way I thought. And that alone was so huge for me. So I would love to maybe ask Doug first and then Max, did you have a similar person or experience that helped you to feel as excited as you are about the work you're doing today? And that may be our last question.
That was what you said, LaKisha, was very well said. And I think, and really hits home for me. I will just say this. For me, it was no one person, it was a series of people.
Mm-hmm.
And building on that, your career, if you're so lucky, is long,
It is.
right? Do not box yourselves in. And if you're lucky, you'll be fortunate enough to work with people that will help you see where the skills and the experiences that you have built are transferable to other things, where you see you can have an impact, like LaKisha just shared.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And Max?
Well, I think both Doug and I had a number of experiences before we ended up here. And I'm also cognizant of us running out of time, and I want to make sure that we wrap up by saying that any other questions that weren't answered are only an email away. And I see that Kelly's back.
Absolutely. So I didn't have any other questions in the chat that I think we could cover. So I think that I can turn it back to Kelly at this point and see if we've done our job.
You guys have done a fantastic job. I mean, it almost makes me want to go back 40 years and be an intern again. I think it is an amazing opportunity, and I think the idea of trying to find your purpose in life is very important, and you stick with that, and whatever your purpose is, you can get there by having these kinds of experiences and opportunities. So I hope this has been useful for the participants, and I hope that you get a really great cadre of interns, and that this is the beginning of a long program for the Produce Marketing Association. LaKisha, Max, and Doug, I want to thank all three of you for your time this afternoon and for helping move forward agricultural science, technology, and sustainability. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.